stupid moms on paternity court.
I completely understand where you're coming from, but you have to understand that your actions are not breaking the cycle, it's perpetuating it.
My son's only 2, and I decided to make, well, practically a fool of myself when I was of that age.
2-month-old baby Lily is without a father. Miss Cantu might have done a lot of stupid things in her life that she has regrets about, but she believes that she conceived Lily the night she spent with Mr. Salinas, and it's time he stepped into his daddy's shoes.
I invited her out. She didn't come through. Went out with some friends, had some drinks. Later that night, I hit her up asking if she wanted to hang out. So she told me to come by, and we talked, we messed around, we had sex. That was it, just a one-night stand. The next day, she woke me up, told me she had to go to class. She also told me that she was off and on with this other guy.
So it might have been a one-night stand, but it definitely had life-altering consequences for both of them. They both knew each other for a year before, and at that time, both of them loved hardcore partying. But Miss Cantu says that she changed her ways while Mr. Salinas stayed irresponsible.
And I decided to hang out with him because I hadn't seen him in such a long time. We ended up having sex. He knew about the guy that I was on and off with for about 3 years, the whole time I was in Corpus. So, you know, I was on and off with him. At that time when me and Mr. Salinas had sex, I was not in an exclusive relationship. So I did not cheat on anybody.
Miss Cantu had no intentions of getting pregnant, so the night she spent with Mr. Salinas, immediately after the deed was done, she went and took the morning after pill to stay safe. But Mr. Salinas' doubts have nothing to do with that. In fact, he thinks that she might have been sleeping unprotected with multiple people.
We just had sex, we didn't talk anymore. I understood that she was kind of on the rocks with this other guy, and I made it clear to her that I didn't want a relationship or a commitment till I was 25 or 30.
All right, so you went your separate ways?
Yes.
Until one day you're on Facebook and you see this post?
Yes.
So Mr. Salinas ended up discovering on Facebook that Miss Cantu's conception window was on September 8th. When he got to thinking, he realized that was the very day when the two of them slept together. It was shocking to him that she was 9 weeks in and hadn't bothered to inform him about it.
Why have you not tried to get to know Lily?
Well, when I saw the message, or the post on Facebook, I immediately messaged Miss Cantu, asking her if there was a possibility that I might be the father, and she said no. She said that she had taken the morning after pill, that she'd been having intimate relations with this guy before and after we had sex.
Judge Lauren asked Mr. Salinas if he's ever interacted with Lily, and he says no. Miss Cantu starts speaking up about how later on, he did find out about the baby girl's existence, and he had every opportunity to show up and try to act responsible. But all Mr. Salinas has are excuses.
He knew that there was a possibility that he could have been the parent to this child, that he didn't put money aside to, you know, possibly seek out if this is his child.
So how far away do you live?
Well, we live 3.5 hours away. So if you had a job at the beginning and you knew that, you know, eventually you're gonna have to go there, then $100 really doesn't sound like much to find out if you have a child.
Even Judge Lauren finds it hard to understand that Mr. Salinas really didn't make an effort to get to know his child. It's like he didn't want to, and he keeps saying that he wanted it confirmed before he ever stepped up to his duties. That sounds like a very lame excuse to Judge Lauren.
This is not about Mr. Salinas, this is not about my mom, this isn't even about anybody in this room except for my daughter Lily. And she deserves to know who her father is. She deserves to know who her father is, because I know if she's anything like me, in the future she's gonna wanna know. She's gonna go searching for him because she's not gonna feel complete or whole until she knows where she comes from.
Eventually, even Miss Cantu's mother is brought into court, and she narrates how she always wanted to raise her daughter right. And things might have happened this way, but it's not fair to judge them for their stupid mistakes. Will the DNA test give them what they're looking for?
In the case of Salinas versus Cantu, Mr. Salinas, you are the father.
Miss Petty might be suffering because of her stupid mistakes, but she claims that she doesn't want her daughter Aaliyah to go through the same. In the courtroom today, there will be Mr. Bale's testimony, and then Mr. Daniels, and only then can Miss Petty know who's the real father of her child.
The way you gotta get it, I mean, the way you could get your kid is if you, all she want is the D, so you gotta sleep with it. You know, all you gotta do is
First
sleep
of
around with
all,
it.
he came to me and was like, I still love you, Ania. He don't want to step up.
But is it true that after you broke up, you had the older child, you all were still sleeping together? Because
Yes.
that's why we're here today, right?
Yes.
Turns out that Miss Petty already has an older kid with Mr. Bale. And the only reason these two were messing with each other was Mr. Bale wanted complete custody of their son. So, even though these two broke up, they kept seeing each other. Make it make sense.
Who last name is on the birth certificate? Mr. Daniels, if you want to see that. If it was my baby, she would have had her with my last name like we did with our son.
I told Mr. Ball first that I was pregnant before I even told Mr. Daniel. He told me because he was in a relationship, he didn't want to ruin his happy home. He told me
I told her I
just
would.
me and Peter to keep it on the low, and he raised both of my kids.
No, I didn't say nothing
He
like
did.
that.
Miss Petty explains that Mr. Daniel was the one who asked to put his last name on her daughter's birth certificate. Mr. Daniel heard that Mr. Bale wasn't even prepared to handle the responsibility of this child, so he knew he had to step up in his place.
I completely understand where you're coming from, but you have to understand that your actions are not breaking the cycle, it's perpetuating it. Because you were also having sex with Mr. Daniel at the same time you were having sex with Mr. Ball. So if we're being completely honest in this court, which is all we're gonna be.
Judge Lauren asks Miss Petty what she wants out of this. Miss Petty starts speaking up about how she grew up without a father and wants to break the cycle. It was really unfair for Mr. Bale to abandon not just her baby, but Aaliyah as well. He even refused to play any part in the little girl's life.
I give him that reason, but for him to avoid the DNA testing make me feel like he already knows
How
and
am
he
I-
don't want the truth.
So what you felt like is he's been avoiding taking a DNA test because in his gut he believes.
No.
Yes, he came
And
by
he's
and, said,
trying to
and looked
avoid
at
his
her and said, well, she do got
responsibility.
my smile.
No,
She
here we
do
go.
look like me,
Your Honor.
but she too light-skinned to be my daughter.
Judge Lauren asks Miss Petty the window of conception, and she's shocked to hear that the woman had been sleeping with both men multiple times during the day. Mr. Bale keeps arguing with the judge, but she's had enough. So she asks Jerome to escort Mr. Daniel on the court now.
You can't help but fall in love with a little baby after holding her. And also the fact that you gave her your last name.
Yes, I love kids. I'm a family person, and from my history, I've been a foster child since I was 4.
So you were breaking cycles of your own,
Yes.
and yet you still stepped in.
Yes, Your Honor.
That's commendable.
It's pretty obvious that between the two men, the most sensible one happens to be Mr. Daniel. Even Judge Lauren is impressed with him. But it boils down to what Miss Petty wants, and the judge concludes that it's possible Miss Petty isn't over Mr. Bale and still wants that despicable man in her life.
Did you find evidence that they
Yes.
were together?
I came home and I see his car outside, so I walk around to the window. I look in there, and all of a sudden, I'm looking around to see what's going on. I see her hand, he's laying down. Her hands is in his boxers.
What?
It's pretty stupid to see Miss Petty ruin her life with a man like Mr. Bale when someone like Mr. Daniel's been with her throughout everything. Baby Aaliyah deserves to grow up with a sensible father. The only way to resolve this matter is to bring out the DNA results.
Mr. Ball, you are her father.
He do not deserve to be the father, honestly.
Oh my God.
He don't.
Sentimental boy.
He hasn't bought diapers since me and Annette met, which is 2012.
I pay child support.
That has nothing to do with being a father.
Or being there.
It doesn't.
It's pretty clear that Miss Davis needs to reevaluate her life, because when she had a baby, Javon, she suspected 4 men to be the father. But today, she's hoping to find a way to make things right by proving that Mr. Smith is the only father of her child.
I had a very bad childhood. I went through 13 different foster homes. I've been to 4 different group homes, and I didn't grow up knowing who my father was until I was 18 years old. And my son's only 2. I mean, it's not his fault that I decided to make, well, practically of myself when I was of that age.
Miss Davis starts by admitting that she's made plenty of stupid mistakes in her past, but she believes that her son deserves a good life. She would do anything for her baby boy. Mr. Smith claims that he was told Javon isn't his son, So it's very strange that Miss Davis wants him to be the father now.
We met on the chat line, I hung out with him, and I spent a week with Mr. Smith. It's actually the time around that I conceived my son.
Mr. Smith, you all basically spent a solid week being intimate. Were you using protection?
No, Your Honor. It was just a fling or, a holiday fling,
It was a holiday fling.
Yes, Your Honor.
Once the fling was over, Miss Davis and Mr. Smith didn't contact each other. They went back to their lives as if nothing happened between them. After Miss Davis explains the story behind the first 3 potential fathers, she admits that she doesn't even remember the name of the 4th one.
When I found out I was pregnant, I was just randomly thinking to myself that, I haven't had my period in almost 2 months.
At that time, did you remember that you had slept with all of these men?
Yes, Your
in
Honor.
such a close proximity?
Yes, Your
And
Honor.
so did you have any idea who your child's father was?
No, Your Honor.
Her ex-boyfriend ended up being upfront with her about not fathering baby Javon. So Miss Davis got potential fathers number 1 and number 3 tested, and the results for both of them came out negative. That leaves her with the guy whose name she can't remember and Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith is right there at around the conception date. So in my heart, I have a feeling that he is. I mean, I've always had the feeling. I didn't want Mr. Smith to be my son's father.
Okay, why?
Well, I mean, to be blunt, he's a mama's boy.
If I'm such a mama's boy, then why she got me here? I'm such a mother's boy.
Mr. Smith ends up speaking the truth that the reason he believes he's not the father is that Miss Davis didn't really reach out to him. Moreover, he believes that the baby doesn't look anything like him, so there's no chance it's his. But then Miss Davis mentioned something.
I felt kind of scared, Your Honor, because I felt like he didn't know me and I felt like a total stranger, Your Honor.
If you've told me yourself, because you said you felt it in your heart that he might be yours, why didn't you step up then? Your father passed away, okay?
Because of the other guys, all them other guys you slept with, and I'm the father, I think you just leaning on me. This would be a gold digger. Give me for my money or what I got.
It's very apparent that this is an extremely sensitive issue for these two. Despite Mr. Smith's obvious reservations, he does not want to step up in case he turns out to be the father. After all, he's already missed 2 years of his baby's life. Guess it's time to declare the results and settle the matter.
Mr. Smith, you are not Javion's father.
I'm so hurt, Your Honor.
You look crushed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, I can see that in your eyes. Because even though you consistently said, I doubt it, there's a disappointment that I see in your face.
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Kavanaugh seems to love paternity court because apparently this isn't her first time here. The last time she came to Judge Lauren, neither of the men she was accusing was the father of her baby. Here she is again. This time claiming that Mr. Spence, her mother's friend, is the baby's daddy.
I started calling him up asking for rides, to the grocery store, to get stuff from my house, and subconsciously I was trying to try to seduce him. I was wearing inappropriate things around him.
And why were you doing this?
Because I was wanting attention. It was just something that I did that was really stupid of me at the time.
Looks like that subconscious seduction paid off. Even Judge Lauren is shocked at this young woman's promiscuous ways around a man. But Miss Kavanaugh says that she is in a bad place. On the bright side, at least, Mr. Spence wasn't involved with her mother.
First time, I shunned it off. Second time, I said, hey, watch yourself. Third time, it's starting to look good. Fourth time, lapse in judgment, and here we are today.
So how many times were you intimate with her?
Just once.
Just one time, Miss Kavanaugh?
Your Honor, I do not believe it to be once. It was at least twice.
Judge Lauren moves on to ask Miss Kavanaugh if she had ever suspected Mr. Spence to be baby Malcolm's father when she first saw the positive pregnancy test. Last time, when the DNA test came out negative, Miss Kavanaugh thought that perhaps the answer lies in some other man's DNA.
He could be a possibility that Mr. Spence is the father. I texted him and I asked him, when was the last time we had sex? He told me it was the end of October.
And when was Malcolm born?
He was born July 9th.
So when you do the math on that, that's
Yes, Your Honor.
about the window of conception.
Yes, Your Honor.
Of course, none of this can go forward without bringing Miss Kavanaugh's mother, Miss Kavanaugh's side of the story. How did she react to finding out that her daughter might be betting one of her really close friends?
Actually, when we were together, like all in the same room, I noticed them looking at each other a little differently. So I questioned each of them. They each denied that anything had happened. She blurted out that you were right, and I did sleep with Ken. He told me the same story that he told you today, Your Honor, that she was coming on to him.
But things really start taking an interesting turn when Judge Lauren begins asking questions about Mr. Spence and his intentions regarding baby Malcolm. After all, will he really step up as a father if the DNA results come out in his favor? Before that, he's got some interesting secrets to reveal.
Window of conception that she described. Do you have any knowledge as to whether or not she was sleeping with other people during that time?
Yes, she told me.
Oh, so she told you?
Yes.
What did she say?
Sleeping with other people. I got a boyfriend.
Oh.
Which was Mr. Bowles at the time, Your Honor.
Understood.
Yeah.
But we also know that there was Mr. Scott, too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Your Honor.
Well, it's true that there's no shortage of men in Miss Kavanaugh's life. A Mr. Scott is called into court, who Miss Kavanaugh believes could also be another potential father, because she had unprotected intercourse with him once when the two got very drunk.
I use protection every time. I don't recall, not using protection.
So you don't recall. Now she says there was an instance when you did not, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you say there was no instance?
No, ma'am. I strongly, I don't believe that, Malcolm is mine.
You don't?
I don't.
Have you seen a picture of him?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Kavanaugh ends up admitting that she has been trying to drink her problems away. And because of that, she suspects there could be a third man who she slept with during the window of conception. Poor baby Malcolm, already confused about which of these 5 men is his daddy. Time for Jerome to bring in the results.
Mr. Scott, you are not his father. Mr. Spence, you are not his father.
Okay.